Hi. Welcome back to Kaede SITREP. Today's podcast episode is a follow-up to yesterday's. You might notice some overlapping information. The information is up to at 11 a.m. on November 15th, 2024. Enjoy!
All right, let's dive into another one. Today, we're going deep into the Indonesian economy.
That's fascinating.
It is. We've got a really interesting mix of sources here, by the way. Financial reports, some pretty intense news analysis, and even some economic forecasts.
So a pretty complex picture then.
Yeah, it all adds up to a pretty complex picture. So our goal today is to help you, the listener, sift through all of this and really understand the key trends.
And what they might mean for the future.
Exactly.
Well, one thing that really jumps out at me is how resilient Indonesia seems to be.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, especially when you consider, all the global economic challenges they're facing. It's kind of an outlier, actually, in a good way.
Okay, so before we get into the details, maybe we should take a quick look at the overall economic health of Indonesia. Just a quick temperature check.
Yeah, good idea.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at the key economic indicators, GDP growth, for example, well, Q3 of 2024 came in at 4.95%, which, it's slightly below the government's 5% target. But it's important to note that the cumulative growth so far this year is actually 5.03%.
So not quite hitting the mark, but not a total miss.
Exactly. And then there's the Indonesian rupiah.
Oh, right.
Like a lot of developing economies, it's weakened against the U.S. dollar, but it's still performing better than some of its neighbors in the region.
Okay, so a little shaky, but holding its own, relatively speaking.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
What else do you see in those indicators? Anything else stand out?
Well, one of the things that I find really remarkable is Indonesia's inflation rate.
Oh, yeah.
In October 2024, it was only 1.71%.
Wow. That's really low.
Yeah.
Especially when you compare it to the rest of the world, really.
It is.
It almost seems to defy, the global trend.
It does. It really does. And I think it's a real testament to how Indonesia's managing its economy, and it's a key factor in its overall resilience.
So it's not just luck, then?
No, definitely not.
They're doing something right. What's driving this resilience?
Well, there are several factors, but one of the most significant is household consumption.
Oh, interesting.
Especially in sectors like hospitality and restaurants, which, indicates a growing confidence in the domestic market.
So people are spending money.
They are.
That's always a good sign.
It is. And it's not just consumer spending. Government spending's playing a role, too.
Okay. Like what?
Well, those big infrastructure projects, like the new capital city.
Ah, right. IKN Nusantara.
Exactly. That's providing a significant boost.
Yeah, IKN Nusantara. That's a big deal. Anything else we should be looking at? Any other trends?
Absolutely. Foreign direct investment, FDI.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, FDI.
In Q3 2024, it grew by 18.6% year on year.
Wow.
Yeah, which suggests that international investors see Indonesia as a stable, promising place to invest their money.
That's a huge jump. 18.6%. Seems like Indonesia's really catching the eye of global investors.
It is, yeah. And there's one sector in particular that's seeing a surge of interest.
Okay, which one?
Tech. Indonesia's tech scene is booming right now.
Ah, okay. This is where I get really interested. The intersection of technology and economics.
Right.
Always fascinating. So what's happening with this tech boom? What are the specifics?
Well, we're talking about some big players here, global giants like Google,
Okay.
NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, Yandex, Nokia, Tencent Cloud, Alibaba Cloud.
Wow, that's quite the list. What are they all doing in Indonesia? What kind of projects?
Lots of things. Building AI centers, setting up factories.
Okay.
Google and NVIDIA are investing $200 million in an AI center in Solo.
Solo, really?
Yeah, it's in central Java, known for its cultural heritage.
That's interesting. An AI center in Solo. What about the other companies? What are they up to?
Let's see. Apple's putting $10 million into a factory in Bandung to produce iPhone and iPad accessories. And Tencent Cloud, well, they're investing $500 million in data centers.
500 million. Wow.
Yeah, it really shows you how important cloud computing is becoming in Indonesia.
So it sounds like the Indonesian economy is doing pretty well, especially in the tech sector.
It is, but we do need to acknowledge that there are also some challenges.
Oh, okay. So it's not all sunshine and roses.
No, it's not. There are some potential headwinds we need to consider.
Okay, so let's talk about those. What are some of the less positive aspects of this whole picture?
Well, one area that's a bit concerning is the manufacturing sector.
Manufacturing.
Yeah. The manufacturing PMI has been contracting for the past 4 months.
4 months straight.
Yeah. It's a sign that this crucial sector is struggling.
What's causing that?
It's a few things. Weakening domestic demand is playing a role, but also those global economic uncertainties we talked about earlier, they're having an impact too.
So it's a combination of internal and external pressures.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so what other challenges are you seeing?
The shrinking middle class. This is a serious challenge for Indonesia's long-term economic goals.
Yeah, shrinking middle class. It's a global phenomenon, right? But it seems particularly pronounced in Indonesia.
It does.
So what's causing it there? What are the factors?
Well, the pandemic, of course, it pushed a lot of people into poverty. But there are also deeper structural issues, gaps in the social safety net, and the shift away from manufacturing towards the service sector, where, wages and job security tend to be lower.
So people who were middle class before the pandemic are now struggling to maintain their standard of living.
Yeah, that's right. And the numbers are quite startling. Almost 10 million Indonesians have fallen out of the middle class since 2019.
10 million people.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a huge number. That must be putting a lot of pressure on the government to find solutions.
It is.
So what are they doing about it? What steps are they taking to address these economic challenges?
Well, they're not just sitting back and doing nothing. They've got a multi-pronged approach to try and address the short-term issues and lay the groundwork for long-term sustainable growth.
Okay, sounds good. What does that look like? What are they actually doing?
Well, for example, to help the manufacturing sector, they've extended tax incentives for property and automotive industries, and they've increased quotas for subsidized housing loans.
Okay, so trying to get people to buy houses and cars. Classic way to boost the economy.
It is.
Oh.
They're also focusing on fostering entrepreneurship through microcredit programs.
So supporting small businesses.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense. What about the shrinking middle class? Any specific policies aimed at that?
Yeah, their focus on downstreaming is a big part of that.
Downstreaming, that's a word we hear a lot. What does it actually mean in the Indonesian context?
So instead of just exporting raw materials like minerals or timber, Indonesia wants to process those resources in the country, create, finished or semi-finished goods, things that will command higher prices on the global market.
Right. Add value before those materials leave Indonesia.
Exactly.
Okay, makes sense. How does that address the shrinking middle class, though?
The idea is that by creating more sophisticated industries, they'll create more skilled jobs that pay better, and that'll help expand the middle class and create a more robust economy.
So it's not just about increasing GDP.
No.
It's about making sure that growth is inclusive and sustainable.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not just about the economics either, right?
No, it's not. The Indonesian government is also really focusing on sustainability.
Like what?
Well, they've set some really ambitious targets for renewable energy development. 75 GW of renewable energy capacity by 2039.
Wow. That's ambitious. Why the big push for renewables?
A few reasons. First, it reduces Indonesia's dependence on fossil fuels, which are, bad for the environment and also subject to price fluctuations. And second, it attracts green investment. More and more global investors are looking for those kinds of projects.
So it's a smart move economically as well as environmentally.
That's right.
So it sounds like the Indonesian government is trying to tackle a lot of challenges at the same time.
They are. It's a real balancing act. And the recent changes to the Indonesian cabinet reflect that.
Oh, right. The cabinet reshuffle. A new team.
Yeah. The Ministry of Finance has pledged its support for these changes and emphasized their commitment to making sure the budget allocation process is smooth and supports the new structure and its priorities.
Okay. So it's a time of transition, but it sounds like there's optimism.
There is, definitely.
Okay, good. But we can't forget about the elephant in the room, the global economic landscape.
Right.
Things are pretty volatile out there.
They are.
So how is all this global uncertainty likely to affect Indonesia?
That's the big question. Maybe before we get into that, we should take a closer look at some of the key global developments that could have a real impact on Indonesia's economic trajectory.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's dive into those global headwinds and see what what Indonesia needs to be wary of.
Sounds good. Yeah, so as we were saying, the global economy is it's a bit shaky right now, and that's bound to have some impact on Indonesia.
Right. So let's unpack that a bit. What are some of the big global developments that that could really affect Indonesia's economic path?
Well, one big one that's really shaken things up is Donald Trump's return to the White House.
Yeah, that's definitely created a lot of uncertainty. How could his policies affect Indonesia, do you think?
It's hard to say for sure what he'll do, but based on his previous term, there are worries about more protectionist measures, maybe even trade wars.
A return to those trade tensions would definitely be a problem. How would that affect Indonesia specifically?
Indonesia's manufacturing sector, which is, as we said, already facing some challenges, could be hit pretty hard by protectionist policies in the U.S.
Okay, so more tariffs, more trade barriers, that could really disrupt their exports.
Exactly, and that could slow down economic growth.
So that's something Indonesian policymakers will need to keep a close eye on. What about other global trends? Anything else that could impact them?
Yeah, rising global interest rates are another big one.
Right, everyone's talking about that. What's the concern for Indonesia there?
Well, one concern is that higher interest rates could make it more expensive for Indonesia to service its debt.
Ah, okay. So that puts a strain on government finances.
Exactly, and that could limit their ability to invest in, infrastructure or social programs.
So it's a potential squeeze on government spending.
Right, and on top of that, rising interest rates can also discourage foreign investment.
How so?
Well, if investors can get better returns in, say, developed economies, which are seen as safer, they might be less likely to invest in emerging markets like Indonesia.
Right, so it's a double whammy. Less government spending and less foreign investment. Not exactly a recipe for economic growth.
It's definitely a challenge, but it's important to remember that Indonesia has faced economic difficulties before,
Oh.
and they've come out stronger.
Okay, so there's reason for some optimism.
I think so. They have a large and diverse economy with some pretty strong fundamentals.
So they've got the potential to weather this storm.
I think so.
Okay.
But a lot will depend on whether the government can implement the right policies.
Right, so it's not just about having good ideas.
Yeah.
It's about putting them into action effectively.
Exactly. We talked about some of the things they're doing, downstreaming, supporting small businesses, those sorts of things. The success of those policies will be crucial if Indonesia wants to hit those ambitious growth targets.
What else will be important?
Attracting foreign investment will be key. As we said, rising interest rates might scare some investors away.
Right.
But Indonesia can counteract that by creating a good investment climate, less bureaucracy, a stable regulatory environment. Those things will help.
So making Indonesia an attractive place for foreign capital.
Exactly.
What about internal factors? What role will domestic consumption play in Indonesia's economic outlook?
Domestic consumption is still a major driver of the Indonesian economy.
Okay.
It's good that household spending is remaining strong,
Hmm.
but policies that support rising incomes and a strong middle class will be really important going forward.
So a strong middle class fuels economic growth, which in turn supports a strong middle class.
Yeah, it's a bit of a balancing act, especially when you factor in all the global economic factors that Indonesia can't really control. The government's going to have to be adaptable, respond to those global shifts while still focusing on their long-term goals.
It sounds like Indonesia is at a real turning point.
I think so.
Huge potential, especially with the booming tech sector, but also some big challenges, both internal and external. So what are the most important questions facing Indonesia's economic future, in your view?
I think one of the most pressing questions is whether Indonesia can balance its domestic agenda with all these external pressures.
So navigating those competing priorities.
Right. On the one hand, you've got President Prabowo setting this ambitious 8% growth target.
That's pretty ambitious. What'll it take to get there?
To hit that target, they'll probably need to attract even more foreign investment and really push that downstreaming strategy. Basically, become more integrated into global value chains.
Okay, so more global integration. But at the same time, President Prabowo has also talked about self-sufficiency. Boosting biofuels, supporting farmers, reducing reliance on imports. Those things seem to pull in a different direction.
That's the tension. Those goals aren't necessarily incompatible, but they do require some careful balancing and some strategic decision making. There might be some trade-offs, and the path to achieving both growth and self-sufficiency is it's probably not going to be straightforward.
So a complex balancing act.
Yep.
What does all this mean for Indonesia's economic future? What are some of the possible scenarios here?
Well, it's always hard to predict the future, but I think there are a few broad scenarios we can think about.
Okay, let's hear them. What's the first one?
One scenario is that Indonesia manages to navigate these challenges. They successfully balance those domestic and international priorities. Yeah. They keep attracting foreign investment, they implement the downstreaming strategy well, and they develop a more robust and inclusive economy.
That's the optimistic scenario. What would it take to make that happen?
I think a few things would need to fall into place. Political stability, consistent and predictable economic policies, a commitment to fighting corruption, and continued investment in things like education and infrastructure.
So good governance and smart investments. What's another possibility?
Well, another scenario is that Indonesia struggles to balance those priorities.
Okay.
And that leads to policy uncertainty and a less attractive investment climate. In that scenario, economic growth might slow down, and they might have trouble addressing issues like poverty and inequality.
So the internal and external pressures kind of combine to hold them back.
Right. And some things that could contribute to that are a resurgence of protectionism in other countries, a big jump in global interest rates, or political instability within Indonesia that makes investors nervous.
So a mix of external shocks and internal vulnerabilities.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay, so two pretty different scenarios there. What's the third one?
This one's maybe a bit more nuanced. It's a scenario where Indonesia chooses a more independent economic course.
Okay, interesting. What would that look like?
They might focus more on strengthening their domestic market, promoting trade within ASEAN, and pursuing a more self-sufficient approach to development.
So less reliance on global markets and more focus on their own region and resources.
Exactly.
What would lead to that scenario?
I think that could happen if global economic conditions get even more volatile. Indonesia might decide to prioritize regional partnerships and domestic resilience over global integration.
Okay, so three very different paths that Indonesia could take. It sounds like they're at a pretty crucial moment.
They are, and the decisions they make in the next few years will have a big impact, not just for Indonesia, but for the whole Southeast Asian region.
That's a good point. We've been mostly focused on Indonesia itself, but they're a big player in ASEAN, right? So how will Indonesia's economic trajectory affect its neighbors?
That's a great question, and it's one that probably deserves its own deep dive. But to put it simply, Indonesia's economic health is tied to the prosperity of the whole region.
So what happens in Indonesia has ripple effects throughout Southeast Asia.
Yeah, pretty much. Indonesia's got the largest economy in ASEAN, so their performance has a big impact on trade, investment, development, all of that.
So if Indonesia does well, the whole region benefits.
Exactly. A strong, stable Indonesian economy can have a really positive spillover effect. More economic activity, more prosperity across Southeast Asia. But if Indonesia's economy falters, that could have negative consequences for everyone.
So the stakes are high, not just for Indonesia, but for the whole region. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've really explored the Indonesian economy from all angles. Before we wrap up, what are your key takeaways from all of this? What are the most important things for our listeners to remember?
I think the main takeaway is that Indonesia is at a really transformative moment.
Transformative in what sense?
The decisions made in the next few years will determine whether Indonesia becomes a global leader in the digital economy, a model for sustainable development, or maybe even both.
So a lot depends on how President Prabowo and his new cabinet handle all of this.
Absolutely. They have a real opportunity to shape Indonesia's economic future, but they're also facing some real limitations. The whole world is watching to see what happens.
Well said. Okay. I think that's a good place to end our deep dive for today.
It's been great talking about this with you.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, we've got these global tech giants pouring money into Indonesia, but at the same time, millions of people are struggling to make ends meet.
Yeah, it really is. It's like you've got these incredible opportunities in some sectors, but also these deep-seated challenges that need to be addressed.
Right. It's a real mixed bag.
Yeah.
And then you add in all the global uncertainty, and it makes for a very complex situation.
It does, and it really raises the question of whether Indonesia can actually pull it off.
What do you mean?
Well, can they achieve those ambitious goals while also dealing with all these pressures? Can they grow the economy and make sure that everyone benefits? It's a tough balancing act.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you've got President Prabowo aiming for 8% growth, which is that's a pretty high bar.
It is, and to get there, they'll probably need to they'll need to attract even more foreign investment. And they'll need to really push that downstreaming strategy.
Right. So become more integrated into global supply chains.
Exactly. But then he's also talking about, supporting local industries, reducing reliance on imports. That's a different kind of approach.
Yeah. It seems like those two goals might be pulling in opposite directions.
They could. It'll be interesting to see how they try to reconcile those different priorities.
So it's not going to be easy.
Definitely not. There will be tough choices to make, and probably some bumps along the way.
It sounds like Indonesia is at a real crossroads.
It is. The decisions they make in the next few years will have they'll have a big impact, not just on Indonesia, but on the whole region.
Right, because what happens in Indonesia affects everyone in Southeast Asia, right?
It does. I mean, think about it. They're the biggest economy in ASEAN, so if they do well, it's good for everyone. But if they struggle, well, that could drag the whole region down.
So there's a lot riding on this.
There is.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to leave them with?
I think the main takeaway is that Indonesia is at a really crucial point in its history. They have a chance to really become a major player on the global stage, but it's not going to be easy.
So the future is it's still unwritten.
Very much so. It all depends on the choices they make.
Okay, well, on that note, I think we'll wrap things up here. Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.